Death Stranding 2 on the beach is the latest, and possibly the final official PlayStation 5 port to hit PC, at least until Sony finally learns their lesson. Like all PS5 games, the fanfare for the PC release is a little muted compared to when it came out on console last year, but it's still a gorgeous game with the potential to tax high-end PCs to their limits. I've got 2 test machines on hand, one humble setup with low to mid-range components from several generations ago, and one cutting-edge monster, and I want to see just how they compare. The min spec machine features a Ryzen 5 3600, 16 gigs of DDR4 and an RTX 2060 Super. These are actually somewhat above the bare minimum system requirements, which Kojima Productions and Nixies say are good for 1080p low at 30 FPS, and closer to the estimated medium 1080p 60 spec, so hopefully we should get a playable experience, even if it's not quite up to the image quality standards of the PS5 original. The Max Spec machine is of course the Ryzen 7 9800X 3D and GeForce RTX 5090, the latter of which was provided to the channel by Scan Computers UK. This spec is way off the deep end. The 4K 60 requirements are a previous gen RTX 4080 and a Ryzen 7 5700X, so I'm expecting good things here. And I got them. Well, okay, perhaps the max settings result was a bit disappointing, considering this GPU's worth more than some people's car, but I did go in and manually adjust everything to its maximum, so I was asking a lot of the 5090. Running through the sprawling mountainscape of the intro scene saw an average of around 72 FPS at native 4K, with 1% lows of 62. More than sufficient for a locked 60 FPS, and a good starting point for frame generation if you have a high refresh monitor that needs satisfying. Enabling quality DLSS lifts the average over 100 if you just want a little extra performance without resorting to frame gen, but I captured all my hero footage at native 4K with DLAA, and VSync enabled to reduce tearing. So far, so utterly normal. The game looks stunning, performs as you'd expect, and all it took was owning the most powerful gaming rig available in 2026. However, what about the low spec machine? What exactly are you missing out on by not being able to blow $5,000 on a PC? Well, unfortunately at native 1080p, 60 FPS seems to be out of the question. Even dropped to the low preset, I only saw a 54 FPS average, which is only a couple of frames short of the results at medium. If I were happy to accept a sub-60 average, and there's no reason why not, I think that 30 to 50 FPS in a single-player game of this kind is perfectly playable, and pursuing 60 at the expense of image quality can be ultimately unrewarding. If I were to accept that, I'd probably be happy to play at the high presets, which, despite lacking ray-traced ambient occlusion and reflections, still looks phenomenally realistic. Dropping to medium or low causes lower quality textures, shorter LOD distances, less ambient occlusion, and lower quality bokeh depth of field, while the high preset is still not only playable and good looking, it fits within the 8GB frame buffer too. However, if I were determined to hit a 60 average, and for the sake of this video I am, I'd need to turn to DLSS. The RTX 2060 Super doesn't benefit as much from the newer upscaling models in terms of performance, so I'm testing using the regular DLSS 4 settings as chosen by the developers, rather than using the overrides in the Nvidia app. At medium settings, it's possible to hit 60 plus with DLSS quality, whereas the high settings preset needs DLSS balanced to just barely scrape a 60 average. The gains with each drop in DLSS setting are really negligible. If I hadn't checked the FPS logs, I'd have struggled to tell the difference between them, so I really don't think there's any point in going all the way down to performance. For the image quality comparison then, the Max Spec PC was at the highest settings and native 4K resolution with DLAA, whereas the min spec machine was at the medium preset at 1080p, with DLSS quality bringing the internal res down to 720p. The lower spec system naturally has the aforementioned drawbacks: the lower resolution textures, the slightly less detailed hair on Mr. Redus and Ms. Seydoux, and the shorter LOD distance, meaning that the landscape reduces quality much closer to the character. That being said, outside of this direct comparison, the game still looks stunning. It's testament to a few things: the ability of the artists, the scanning technology that digitizes the actors and terrain, the optimizations of the Decima engine, and the quality of even previous generation upscaling models. You can make the game look worse. There are presets that are lower than low, and I dare say some low-spec gamers would have to try them out to get a playable experience, but on this setup, I think the game looks and runs amazingly well. I look forward to keeping DS2 in my benchmarking lineup going forwards, and I should be testing it with some classic GPUs in the near future. In the meantime, thanks for watching, kindly do the usual YouTube things if you feel so inclined, and I'll see you next time.